Hello to you all, and welcome to Pyramid Energy. I want to get straight into this, but before I do, I want to invite you to listen to what I'm going to be sharing as an energy. I'm reluctant to put anything into context and give you all the scenarios of how this could play out during this channeling. Because I'd like you to keep an open mind, because I very much feel like you might see this playing out in various ways and not just in one particular context. So I'm going to refer to it as an energy. It could be a person. It could be a mindset. It could be a particular structure in your life. It could be, it's got masculine energy. Could be a behavior. It could be anything. The main thing that I'd like you to notice here, it also could be a consciousness, like an aspect of your consciousness. The thing that I want you to see here is how this energy was occupying a part of your life, an important part of your life, the part of your life that perceives you and communicates to you who you are, to yourself, to the world. Okay, so to an extent, we could be talking about a narrative. Okay. Something has shifted in the collective in what feels like the last 24 hours. As I feel it, it feels like 12 hours, but let's say 24 hours. And so this is something that feels like a recent shift. It was an aggressive movement. Okay. There was a battle. You've won a spiritual battle. Something that was a problem for you is no longer a problem. Okay. There's a lot of this that was ego-based. And this aspect, this energy, has not been able to survive because of the kind of self-inquiry you've been going through, because of the up-leveling in your discernment, because of, you're telling your own story. So you're crafting your own narrative. You're no longer afraid to face your story. You're no longer on like the shaky ground you were on a few months ago, where you were susceptible to certain parts of your self-concept, your idea of yourself, how you see yourself, to be captured. Now, my tummy won't stop, if you can hear it, please excuse me. The thing about this is that this battle, you won it by being yourself. By being yourself. There used to be sort of like a people-pleasing sort of energy in the space that this energy used to thrive off. This is like, it's hard to explain. This is so abstract. But please stay with me. And so what happened in the past few months is that sort of your antenna switched on. Okay, your discernment antenna. And it opened your mind. You became more open to questioning certain beliefs. We're back on the topic of beliefs, okay? And so you're no longer, your ego kind of relaxed on things like the need to be right, the fear of being made to doubt yourself, whatever these things are. So this energy was occupying the space before where you needed that. You needed that. It feels codependent. Where like I validate you, you validate me, we validate each other. And before you know it, because you actually can't see, this energy is actually in control of how you see yourself, because you need to stay dependent, and therefore what they say goes. You're unaware that they're aware of all aspects. You're only aware of how you've been perceiving it. And now, because your discernment sort of expanded and opened up and wasn't scared of seeing more than you were actually allowing yourself to see before, you've seen the whole, almost the whole spectrum, you've seen all the different sides of it without drawing any conclusions. You didn't actually sit and draw any conclusions. During this time, you've been very relaxed. Okay. You've been very at ease with, what your environment is feeding you. By that, I mean, triggered less often. You see, because the triggers, if we're too triggered, we tend to run. And so then we don't get to see everything. Whereas if we're not easily triggered and a bit more open, even if we haven't decided where we stand on something, when we're open, we stick around and then we get to see more. And a lot of the things that are masked and cloaked then start to show up. And so what's happened is that I see like somewhat of a, and perhaps you were not aware, somewhat of a standoff. Okay. A standoff. By that, I mean, where, let's say there's a clash and you, watch, and that energy can kind of see it's being watched and stops. You know, like I'm seeing like wild animals. I'm seeing like predators' instincts turning on at night, you know, in the dark. And like one stands still to see whether the other can see it. And then maybe at some point, power dynamics are measured and one dashes, or there's like a charge. So that moment of truth, are we going to dash or are we going to charge? That moment of truth feels like it happened in the last 24 hours. That energy is dashing. The reason is because that energy cannot thrive around an open mind. Okay? Another reason is that that energy cannot thrive when you are indifferent. When you are indifferent, you see, when you've got options of different ways to think, there's no more power. There's no more power. This is actually not so much about the other energy as it is about you. I'm going to pull a chakra spread because I want to see what's going on. I'm going to use the nature cards I used for the last reading, because definitely a bit eerie, the energy. Okay, there's something dark about it, about the reality, but things are going to start being so much easier because that energy doesn't have tactics for your current sort of state of being. Those tactics don't exist. Another thing I'm seeing with these predators in the dark, I'm seeing, predator doesn't necessarily mean you're bad or good. It just means, in this case, let's say there could be an attack, it's not, I'm using animals here. Another thing I saw with these predators in the dark is like one hiding behind a bush to see what happens next, to see how you behave next. Do you behave like you haven't seen them? Do you behave relieved that they've sort of, what you thought was there is not there? Do you behave by calling your other friend predators to find them? I'm seeing it all playing out. Do you run? Are you afraid? Okay, because if you were afraid, that predator was going to pursue you, because now you're too focused on your fear. The leaves are bustling or rustling in the bushes or whatever. You know, let's just really get animalistic here to be able to picture how this plays out, because this is some serious animal instinct. And again, we literally could be talking about just a consciousness, you know, for the fact that, let's just leave it at that, because it could be all of those things that I mentioned earlier. And it generally is, because what we experience as within, so without, what we experience, we're able to experience because there is an aspect of us that's able to mirror that experience. Otherwise, we wouldn't see or experience anything. Okay? And so in that moment where they were hiding behind the bush to check your reaction, oh my God, the worst reaction you gave. The worst reaction you gave. You didn't even care. You didn't care. Like, by that, I mean, you moved on. You had other stuff to do. And it was really like, it all happened so quickly. You didn't even realize that you'd moved on. Do you know what I mean? It's like you didn't even realize you were being watched. You didn't realize, you know, anybody cared what you were up to. But in that moment, and this is what I'm talking about, you regained something. You regained your own story. You're sort of like really cementing a lot of your integration. There's this narrative of yours that you're finally ready to begin to integrate. So what I'm seeing is I see your consciousness, and then I see where you were before, and I see an awareness of wounds. And then I see new information coming across you. And then I see you interacting with this information, but not yet allowing it into your world. And then I see you with time, because you're at ease and because you've got space and because the time is quiet, you know, it's the dead of the night, and because it's quiet. And in that time, I see you sort of certain of these these pieces of new information, highlighting which ones you're going to keep. And I see you able to now start keeping some of them, almost retelling your own story and getting to know your own story afresh, because you're actually not being bothered, and you are not even aware that you've wounded now, that you've separated this wound from yourself. You've isolated it because you've had the space to allow it to realize that it has no place in your life. So it was sort of running this, like, let's say program energy was sort of running simply because there was vacant, unoccupied space. There was vacant, unoccupied space. But then there was this energy disruption that happened. Again, maybe I'll go back to the solar surges. This energy disruption took place, and sort of, you know, there again, like I said in that one video recently, energy can react, we can all react, a being can react differently to a surge of solar energy coming in. Okay, and it affects everyone. I think I mentioned in that reading that what you receive, they also receive, because we share, let's say, this solar energy and these solar flares. And so then they have a certain way of reacting, you have a certain way of reacting, but also what starts to form a part of your reaction is theirs, because they're in your field and you're observing. And so there's this aspect of it that's actually shared, and you seem to have been clearing your own solar plexus, balancing that out. However you've been doing that, partly doesn't necessarily mean you have to breathe like I suggested in that reading. It could mean you are literally just giving yourself space and not letting stuff just get to you, like I mentioned earlier now. The challenge with how the solar energy can land on another being is an ego sort of death of sorts. The ego does not die easily. Depends on how reliant a being is on their ego. It doesn't die easily. And so it can tend to, especially with more of that solar power, it can tend to become more aggressive when it receives that surge, instead of integrating any new feelings of anger, aggression, fear. Okay, because now if we don't want to accept that we have fear, we turn it around and we hit back, we defend. So this is like the clash that happened. This is this energy, the way it's playing out in my mind's eye. I can't tell you, but you've received a part of your story back, a big part. You've received a big, and story, I mean your narrative, how you speak to yourself, how you see yourself, what you believe about yourself, how much you believe in yourself, how you operate. At this point, I'm going to tell you that if Khunze tells you that this in you is happening this way, that makes you question, you're not just going to take it at face value. Absolutely not. You're not going to take it at face value. And you're not necessarily overly attached to what you believe about yourself. It's just that your instincts are saying, pause before you just accept that might just be Khunzi's reality and not yours. And so you don't have to run from Khunzi. You can just sit across Khunzi and hear her out and decide if this makes sense to you and if it feels true to you. You're easy. And so I think that, and I don't know if I said this right in the beginning, but you will know if this has taken place if you feel a lightness out of sort of what feels like nowhere. A lightness. Because a lot of this stuff actually takes place in the field and not in your conscious environment, where the things that you're conscious of, the things that are visible and the things that are like physically communicated. And so these battles happen. There's this tug of war that's happening that's actually also exhausting you, because you're trying to progress and this energy is trying to hold you back. And then, there's been a lot going on in your field, in the background, without your, hard intervention and deep thought and, doesn't it feel good to see how easily the work happens in the background when you're easy on your body? And so you allow your body to sort of guide you, feel how it feels, and not necessarily always overanalyze what every single impulse means. Okay, so to not attach meaning to absolutely everything, and to sort of decide to be more open and sort of decide to welcome in the things that you want and not resist them because you're scared of failure. And so to remove a lot of those things sort of that were tightening your experience, to be able to see how much intelligence your field holds and how much it can recalibrate without your conscious thought applied. Isn't it interesting? I find it incredibly interesting. Another thing this has done is that it's opened up room for creativity. When something is under the control, when something is ruling your narrative and your mind, it locks you in. It's very difficult to be able to be creative when you're boundaried in and you can't even tell. Okay, because a lot of these things, if I'm this voice in your head telling you, you can do this, you can do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. This is how you are. This is how you've always been. This is how it is. This is how it's always been. How are you going to be creative if your thoughts are sort of like echoing this stuff? what's fascinating me the most is that this seems to have happened without effort. It's like it happened in the background. If you're feeling lighter today, and if you feel it like in the next like couple of days, let's give it 2 days on each side, because for me this feels like it happens quick. It happens quickly. I'd love to know. Because it's a collective energy. It's a collective energy, and it also is reminding me of, again, this idea of critical mass. It's like when enough beings in a system change how they are behaving, they gain more influence over the system. And I was careful not to say control, because actually it's about influence. It's about influence. It's just that when you have the majority, in a sense, you have control, but then that control kind of doesn't last in the face of disruption. Okay, so I'm interested because I think it means something more. And I know I just talked about not attaching meaning, but I believe it's more is about to unfold in the collective, because this particular energy was holding a lot back. It was holding a lot back. I feel like a lot of 2025 was a real fear of being triggered. Okay? And triggering the belief system. Not triggering, let's say, the heart and all of that. It's as if the heart was actually also so guarded because of this protected belief system. The heart was guarded, and so there was actually no fear that anyone could hurt your feelings, because, you know, you weren't allowing your feelings. No one was allowed near your feelings. It's not funny. I'm just, I was also in 2025. No one was allowed near your feelings, whereas now you've uncaged your heart. You're no longer like protecting it behind a cage. Yes, you're watching out for who comes close so you can see what's going on, but your mind was caged, and you've unlocked your cage around your mind, and you're even letting it move around at night and go wander and see what's going on, astral travel, check what's going on, bring that information back to you, interacting with it, chatting to it, laughing about some of it. Seriously, anyone who's never listened to a video like this will get here and be like, what the hell? Okay. I'm going to leave this here. This was interesting energy. Initially I shuffled some cards, and then this started coming up, and I was like, what is this? And I was going to lay them down, and I'm at this point where I almost turned away to be like, I'm not reading this, but I'm learning more and more to just read the energy, accept how it's delivered is what I mean. And so sending you all so much love.